Hello, this is Tanya with Rhema Talk with Tanya. Today we're going to be talking about provisions for the flesh. I am going to be referencing Romans 13 chapter. The last two verses of Romans are verses 13 and 14. And it's saying for us to walk upright in the Lord and not to take pleasure in, it says revelry, drunkenness, lewdness, lust, strife, envy, which in layman's terms, we know revelry is more like partying hard. Drunkenness, we know what that means. Lewdness is like any kind of sexual indecency or sexual behaviors. Strife, more like anger and bitterness towards someone over an issue or something like that. And we also know envy is more like desiring something or coveting something that someone else has. So it's saying to not to take pleasure in those things, to walk upright and properly in the day of the Lord, and make no provisions. Verse 14 says, make no provisions for the flesh to fulfill its lust. So when we talk about making provisions for the flesh, basically, if I can explain it in layman's terms, it's more like making no plans for sin, like not planning to sin. So a lot of times, so it's more like premeditated sin. It's more like premeditated sin. You know what you want to do. You know what you have a desire to do. You know it's not right, but you still make the plans to carry it out. You still make the plans to do what you have to do to make sure that you're there, to make sure that everything is lined up. So it's like making provisions for the flesh is almost like premeditated sin. So even in the natural, let's say someone is in court, and whether it be like, okay, so I'll just say a crime, doesn't have to be murder, but a crime. Premeditated crimes are judged harder than, let's say, first, second, third degree, which could be circumstantial. In the moment you're reacting in the wrong way in that moment. But premeditated mean you have time, you had time to plan, you intentionally made plans to carry this out. So in the natural, if your punishment is greater for premeditated murder or premeditated crimes, if your punishment is greater in the natural, how much more greater than are our sins judged on the spiritual side if we premeditate sin. So it's even like, it's sad to say that some of us will actually like budget for premeditated sin, save up money, go in debt, take out loans just to fulfill the lust of the flesh. This is crazy that we actually do this, and it's something that we don't think about. All we know is that we want to do what makes us happy. We want to enjoy life. We want to have fun. We want to just let our hair down and just have fun, sometimes, but we don't realize that, sin can creep in. And if we're actually making plans to carry sinful acts out, that's making provision for the flesh. And if we are actually doing this premeditated, the consequence is actually going to be greater for engaging in premeditated sin. So we want to be careful not to make provisions for the flesh. It could be something as simple as, and this is something that happens often, something as simple as maybe gossiping or attending events, just so that you can go with your girlfriends or go with your friends or whatever, and go with family members just specifically to gossip, just specifically to be able to slander and backbite, and just specifically to carry out those characteristics that are not of God. That's premeditated sin. So some people, okay, let's say someone is having a wedding or a gathering or an event, or someone was promoted or in their job or whatever it is, and you make plans to attend. You're spending money on hotels. Sometimes you may catch a flight. Sometimes, and you make provisions, and some people actually take out loans, go in debt, get pay their loans, whatever they have to do to attend certain events, just to go sit there and talk about somebody, just to go sit there and backbite, or just to go sit there and talk and just slander. That's premeditated sin. So you're spending money, getting in debt, taking out loans to go on a so-called vacation, just to go and sin. Let's say, even with lust, sometimes people know that, let's say they're attracted to someone, and they know that this person may be at a certain event. You go buy clothes, you want to make sure your hair and nails, and you do, some people, women, we do that anyway, but sometimes we go the extra mile and spend extra money just to make sure we're seen, just to fulfill the lust of the flesh. So even those simple things like that people, engage in on a day-to-day basis, that may not even seem like it's a real big deal, those are even considered making provisions for the flesh. Going just specifically to lust after someone, or to, be noticed by someone that's already married, or you're already married. And so it's so many little things, that can turn into big issues. Even, let's say someone that may have a gambling problem, you may be invited somewhere, and that the people that you're going with, they all have gambling issues too, or that these are people that gamble. You know what I'm saying? And and you go, just to have fun, but you already know that you're going to engage in something that you're not supposed to be doing. And for instance, even with people that may be on drugs or whatever, or have a drinking problem or alcohol problem, or weaknesses and issues that you probably haven't really overcome. You make plans to go in a certain area. You make plans to make yourself vulnerable to sin. You know what I'm saying? So these are all provisions of the flesh. So that's what Romans 13, the last two verses, talk about, not making provisions for the flesh, not actually making plans to sin. So we're talking about staying away from premeditated sin. So we know that premeditated sin is going to have a greater consequence for actions like that. So that was just a little bit about provisions for the flesh. So let's make sure that when we are planning things, that we're not specifically planning to put ourselves in situations where we can fall short, or situations where we can fall into sin, but we have to be delivered. So let's be mindful, and let's be mindful not to tempt our brothers and sisters in those areas. A few verses in chapter 13 above above verses 13 and 14, a few verses above those talk about, not tempting your brothers and sisters in certain areas too, not causing others to stumble and fall. So we want to be careful of the things that we're getting ourselves involved in, and we want to also be careful about the things that we may be tempting someone else to be involved in, because just because you may be strong in an area, if your brother or sister is not strong in that same area, you should not, by all means, you should not invite them. You should not bring sin to their doorstep. Just be considerate. Just be considerate of those that may not be as strong as you are in those areas. Don't tempt them in those areas. Anything that can make somebody else fall. Just be mindful of put yourself in those shoes. If you were struggling in an area, you wouldn't want anyone. If you're trying to really overcome something, and you were not as strong as you should be, you wouldn't want somebody coming around you, tempting you to fall back into the same thing you're trying to crawl out of. So let's be mindful, let's be careful, let's be considerate of our brothers and sisters, that we don't tempt them in certain areas. And also let's be mindful and considerate of premeditated sin, which is also provisions for the flesh.